Right, we're on Waiheke Island with Sean Spratt here at the beautiful Destinae Bay. It's actually my first time at Destinae Bay. I did not expect it to look like this. Thanks for having me, Sean.
Oh, no, it's fantastic to have you, Stephen. I'm glad we've met many times before, so I'm quite thrilled to be able to show you the place because you can try the wine in the glass, but there's just, as you can see, it's really hard to capture this, even in a photo or anything like this. It's
the
really,
verticality, particularly.
Yeah. So some of these slopes over here are actually up to 38 degrees, which is hard on the back and hard on the equipment, but it really helps with natural drainage aspect to the site for sun and for good grape growing and getting Cabernet ripe, which is the key for us.
So you were mentioning before that Cabernet is on the higher slopes, so this part here will be Cabernet?
Yeah, so this main block here is Wong MW, which is Terreo for Island of Grapes or Island of Wine, I think is, depending on what your exact pronunciation is or translation is. So this is predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon, Clone 15. This particular variety gives us a lot of our dark berry characteristics, the blackberries and a lot of those real fruit characters. Over on this side, we've actually got the steep block over here, the Ashley block, mostly LC10 from the Longhorn Creek. Tighter clusters, smaller berries, but gives really good, Cabernet typicity, that sort of backbone and that lovely edge that we look for in Cabernets and that we expect from. So that's the primary part of it. Down here, we've actually got the more shelter part is our Merlot. That's all exclusively 181 clone, which comes from a little chateau that's known for making a decent Merlot every once in a while, Chateau Petrus. So I figured if it's good enough for Petrus, it's good enough for us. And then we've got a little bit of Petit Verdot, some more Merlot, a little bit of Malbec over here, and then Cabernet Franc, and a bit more Cabernet Sauvignon on the other side of the road.
Actually, this is a very pleasant experience standing up here with the breeze coming. I'm surprised by how much of a cooling influence it kind of has up here. It's quite a... So although it felt warm when we were down there, this is where it'll be quite cool up here, especially because we've got, I think, a southwesterly happening right now,
which is going to be the cooler breeze. But again, we just step down. You just come down here a little bit, and you get even just a few feet down here, and it becomes a lot.
There, it's now it's being blocked off.
Right. So you can see how that breeze just dropped right off to here, which of course is why the vines start here. So.
Understood.
Everything's 100% hand harvested. Everything's pruned by hand. We do a tiny bit of mechanical leaf plucking, but then we actually still go through and fine tune that by hand, so it's not a strict mechanical leaf pluck.
It can't be easy getting machinery up and down some of the
Well, I mean, it was really hard. We can only get, there's only 2 Italian tractors we could find in the world that can actually navigate the site and do it. And of course, figured it'd be the Italians that would make an equipment like this because they've got sites that make this look perfectly normal and boring. So
it feels like a pity to go inside on a beautiful sunny day like this, but I can't wait to see what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this gives you a good idea of the place the grapes come from, but. And everything for here is really about in service to the vineyard, so it's good we spent some time here, but we should really go in the winery and talk a little bit more about what happens in there.
Sounds good. Fantastic.
Okay.
See you in there.
We started it in sort of about 2003, 2004. It was built and commissioned, and our first vintage in it was 2005. Which is why we really consider, while we had a little tiny bit of wine in 03 and 04, it was sort of like making it in the shed or the barrel hall, which was the only thing there. 05 was the first time we actually had all the equipment, so we really kind of consider that our first commercial vintage and release. One of the reasons that we did this and why we feel that this was so important was, as I was talking with other winemakers at Ridge, we have some family that were associated with the Mondavis and Opus One, so we talked a lot with them. And the one question I always asked as I was sort of starting this project was not, hey, I'm starting a vineyard winery, what should I do? I asked the question, I'm starting a vineyard winery, what shouldn't I do? What's the one thing that if you could change one thing? Because if you ask people for a list of what they should do, you'll get about 8 million answers. But if you ask anybody, what's the one thing you wish you did different? You get very specific answers very quickly. And what that really taught me very quickly is that, good winemaking is often not interventionist winemaking. And if you can eliminate all of the problems and all the things that can be an issue, you shouldn't really have to do a lot. And that gives you that opportunity to capture this and this site without having to do a whole lot of work. And so if we can really protect everything, have a good winery design, solve all these problems, we see ourselves less as making the wine and more about sort of shepherding the wine on its journey. So from that standpoint, we always kind of consider ourselves interventionist, non-intervention winemakers.
Okay.
So by having the winery here, we don't have to travel too far. A grape doesn't have to go more than 500 meters from the vine to the bottle. When it gets here, we can do all the fruit processing and receiving here, and then we can follow it through the winery in a gravity assist manner. It's not quite gravity flow.
Sure.
Gravity flow, it turns out, you got to build your winery on a hill like this.
Like 3 levels.
Yeah. So but we're not having to. It all follows this progression down there. And so, when I talk to people like Ridge, and I said, well, what do you wish you were doing differently? And their big thing was sorting. We need to do a better job of sorting. And so that's a big part of what we do, and I can sort of show a little bit more about that. But this is where all the fruit receival happens. Everything comes in here and starts working its way through the winery.
And it's interesting because from here you kind of get a view of most of your blocks.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and again, so you can see nothing has to go more than 500 meters from the vine to the bottle, which makes us a true single vineyard, estate-grown and bottled winery.
Cool.
They'll be picked into these small bins, and then we just dump them into some larger black bins that we can bring in on the tractors or the bikes to get them in. So this is what kind of comes in up there on the fruit pad. And when I was talking with Ridge, they said, yeah, we're not doing a good enough job of sorting, and we really looked at this process. It's a little bit different now, but certainly 25 years ago when we were starting, the vast majority of wineries, this is the last time a human being would see it before it ended up here.
Yeah, right.
So we broke that whole process apart. Now there's lots of great things like optical sorters and things like that, and I would be a kid in a candy store if I was buying new grape making equipment, grape processing equipment today. But we had to kind of build all this stuff ourselves and customize it ourselves because it just didn't exist back then. So we had the guys in France build a custom vibrating tray for us. So post-destemming, we could sort out, and it's just a sift and shake. This is everything that is not going into the wine. That's about 1 or 2%. And it's Waiheke stink beetles, shot berries, overripe berries, raisins, split skin, all that kind of stuff. This is what's coming off the vibrating table. Now, most winemakers and people look at that and go, that's amazing. That's fantastic. And we said, yeah, but see, there's a little stem right there. That's still not good enough. So then we put it through a conveyor that's manually sorted by hand. And so every single berry goes through this process until it ends up into the tank here.
Do you know what proportion of, I know this changes from vintage to vintage, but what proportion of the grapes that you're actually picking make it into the fermenter at the end?
Yeah, I mean, about 50% gets thrown away.
Wow, okay. Wow.
50% of the actual, 50% of the theoretical production. In reality, you probably would never crop that heavy. Even any vineyard probably wouldn't do that. So for us, in terms of yield and juice to hectare or whichever kind of calculation you want to do, we're on the very small side of even what the most restrictive Bordeaux chateaus would do. So we're probably 20 to 30% less than even what the average is for a lot of people.
Okay.
In terms of yield per acre or hectare of finished wine.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very, very, very low yielding. From that point, when it comes to vinification, we're at that point we are doing cold soak.
Okay.
So we'll cold soak the wines for usually about 72 hours, give or take. Could be.
So you chill them the moment they go into.
They're getting chilled, yeah. So we'll take them down we'll hold them down to about 8 degrees. Once we've done that cold soak, we'll let the wines warm up naturally. They will start to actually ferment with whatever sort of indigenous yeast are coming around. We will then introduce a very specific yeast to make sure that we get a very reliable ferment.
Is that isolated from your vineyard, or is that
no? We use just selected yeast. There's a lot of great wines out there made with natural ferments. We were looking for something to really focus on this, and so we didn't want yeast to be putting too much of its own impact on the wine, and we really wanted to have consistency year over year so that people could get the vineyard expression without without a yeast variability component.
So do you use a slightly different yeast for your different varieties? Or?
Yeah, a couple, and we'll sort of tailor that to also vintage conditions. It's about 10 days of primary ferment. We're doing a mixture of hand plunging. So you see the paddles up on the wall, so that's a good workout for the shoulders. And then another 2 pump overs per day. So it's about three.
Okay.
So we're touching the wine about 3 times a day. It's about a 10-day period, right? And then during that period, and that's mostly just because we want to make sure the ferment's moving along. We want to manage the temperature. We track the temperature 24 hours a day. So that's why we've got these temperature probes down in the tanks. We will cap the temperature usually at a max of about 30. Okay. Maybe 31, 32 if we're looking for a little extra extraction. Sure. Maybe a little less if not. So somewhere between that 28 to 32 range.
Hot.
Yeah, not hot. No, we definitely would always, in the juice temperature would never get above 30, but the max cap temperature might hit 32. That will get us through ferment. We'll be through in about, usually pretty quick, usually about 10 to 12 days. And then we're in extended maceration, and that's really based on taste and color development. So we're tasting on a daily basis until we decide that we're happy with the wines. And then at that stage, it turns out that by the time we're ready to press, it's usually about 30 days from pick to press. Okay. So about 30 days total vat time. It can be maybe a little bit less if we decide to run a shorter maceration time. Sure. These doors will open up. Oh yeah. Cool. This railing comes off. Yeah. Oh, the tank's up there with the hatchway. This attaches onto it, and we take you and throw you in the tank with a shovel and a pair of clean boots, and it goes down there and directly into the press. Right. And you might notice it, but that's not, that's actually a white wine press. Yeah, we actually use a white wine press, not a red wine press. Okay. It's a pneumatic press, so we actually don't have to run real high pressures. Okay. We just press it a lot. So a lot of pressing at low pressure, tumbling until we've extracted
several cycles at the same level.
Maybe 5, 6, depending on the size of the batch and the variety. We make 3 wines here, Destinae, Mystae, and Magna Praemia. So Destinae is like the essence of destiny. It's like that from which destiny came. It's a snapshot of the whole vineyard. Yep. It's much more Merlot and Cabernet driven. Okay. So it's usually about equal proportions of Cabernet and Merlot, with the Franc, Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot sort of supporting it. But if you wanted to taste what was a vintage overall like at Destiny Bay, what was the 2020 vintage, what did all the varieties look like? Try the Destinae, because that's going to give you the best shot of it. But because we are using more Cabernet, more Malbec, and more Merlot, and it's more fruit driven, we actually think it also works well with the free run fractions, which are a little bit more fruit expressive. Sure. And so the Destiny has more free run in it. When we get to the Mystae, which is if you were the follower of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, it meant that you were into the theater, the arts, the sciences, and you went to see plays and pondered the mysteries of the universe while drinking a glass of wine. So if you followed Dionysus, you were the Mystae. That's this wine, so it's kind of my baby. It's my favorite blend to make. It's the one I spend the most time thinking about because I have the most latitude in some ways. But it's usually about a 2-to-1 ratio of Cabernet Sauvignon to Merlot. Okay. So maybe if it's 50 Cab, it's 25% Merlot, and then Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. And then finally, we've got Magna Praemia, which is Latin for great rewards, and that's really to focus on what can Cabernet Sauvignon do here and what can we do with Cabernet on the site. So it's usually 70% Cabernet Sauvignon plus or minus 5%. And all the other varieties are in service to it. But with the Mystae and the Magna Praemia, we're using more of those press fractions. So it does kind of constrain, because we've got less of those, it constrains how much we can actually produce to a certain extent. So 24 for me was really great because I was like, this is fantastic. It's just, I thought it was just in a real sweet spot in terms of the maturation. So we're getting good ripeness, great character, great color, structure, but just a really nice, a slightly lower alcohol. When I say slightly lower, we're still probably 14 or 13. Sure. It's not like 12 and a half or something like that. So this is the Destinae. Yeah. 24. This will be bottled probably in the next 5 to 6 months. Okay. We'll probably start moving it out of oak in stages. So we use a mixture of French and American oak. So we get some great characters. The French gives it a little more structure, some more savory characters. The American really helps with lift and length of the palate and supports sort of the fruit. So we see a really good melding of both of them rather than trying to be sort of monolithic in our oak program of being. My job would be easier if I just went 100% French. But we find that mixing that American oak in at sort of between 30 to 40%, depending on how much it's sort of new 1, 2, or 3 year, we think really is a big part of what makes these wines sing.
So what proportion of the barrels would you renew every year?
Oh, we're probably bringing in about a third new. Okay. Yeah, and then the rest are sort of older, second, third, first, second, third fill barrels.
So we've just come back up from the barrel hall. We got to taste the 24s, and this was a surprise for me to go 11 vintages back to finish on a 2013.
We had a limited time. There's almost so much wine you can try, so I sort of thought the 24s, and we kind of go about 5 years back in time from where we are today to the 2020s, which was a special vintage and challenging for reasons beyond our control.
Yeah.
And then
it worked out all right for you.
It worked out all right. Yeah. And then to try the another 5 years back to try the 2015, and then also just to give you even a further look back into the time machine at the 2013 Mystae.
And I have to say, it's really helped me understand not just the vintages, but the fact that in each of these sets, 24, 20, and 15, the personality of the three wines is a lot more distinct than my sort of initial notes from having tasted blind, the wines blind. Give me, because kind of looking at them side by side, the differences are a lot more stark. From barrel right into bottle, and they stay that way, which I really appreciated you taking the time to run through with us today.
Oh, well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, sometimes even for us, it's hard, especially in the early days. It can be even sometimes blind. We'll have a hard time telling the difference between the three wines. I'll get it wrong all the time, but I think once you have got some time, and especially with vintages, I think that's the idea of what we're trying to do with the Destinae, the Mystae, and the Magna Praemia. I hope it comes forward that there is a stylistic difference in what we're trying to do with these three different takes on the Cabernet blend.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. What you mentioned earlier about the Magna Praemia being an expression of Cabernet, that's a through line across the entire day, right from what we saw in your final blend and barrel through to the 2015, just that Cabernet character, and it's not like a ripeness of Cabernet character, even though that 2015 is considerably riper in expression. It still has this graphite and blackcurrant leaf edge to it, this restraint to it. Even in the bigger, more powerful wines, it has a sleekness to the tannins with what you've done. Yeah, it really stands out as being a Cabernet wine.
Yeah. I mean, it was the wine that we thought of when we started this vineyard. It was always Magna Praemia first, because we think this is a site that can do great things with Cabernet, and so we planted it, with that in mind. But then we realized, we had a lot of different other angles we could take on it, and what we could produce here and highlight. And once you get into the vineyard and start to see what it produces, because when you're standing out at bare land on top of the hill and trying to figure out what it's going to be, you're just taking your best guess at that point.
Yeah, the vintages that we had a look at here, I think I have a slight preference for your 20s over the 15s, just for my personal preference in terms of where sort of size and ripeness of these styles of wine are. The 15s are beautiful. They're a powerful, very ripe tasting vintages, as you pointed out. And to borrow from your terminology, you mentioned a certain Italianate balance and tannin mouthfeel to the 20s, and I think that really helps kind of bring in that layer of something savory, but also this tartness, like a really refreshing tartness to it. It's a great look. Its 20s are a great vintage. We've been lucky, with the exception of 23, where 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, nothing, and then 24, all really, really exceptional vintages. And I feel like it's a different vineyard now, and I think from 2019 on, than it was from 2005 to 2015. And I think that's a product of what we're seeing happen with the climate and vintages starting. Or we've moved our vintage window an entire month. So how would they not be different? How could it be the same? And I don't control that one. Yeah, that's a cautionary tale.
That one's beyond my control as a winemaker. We're finishing. We used to harvest in mid-April, and now we're harvesting in mid-March.
Just to try and retain the same balance.
Well, it's just the season starts earlier, right? So it's not really. But March weather is different than April weather. It's going to be different. So these wines will always be a little bit different. But I hopefully you see that there's still what we're trying to do, the mission statement, the goal, the objective. Even though, of course, we've got different vintage variation, but hopefully it comes through what our ethos is, what our passion and what our aspiration is, and how do we present what it is we get out from here, and can try to get into a bottle and to people like you and collectors and who really appreciate wines.